Being very entitled and controlling, narcissists have no difficulty stepping all over your personal boundaries. So that's why I put together an extensive video class called This Is Me. It has 25 videos, written documents, guided questions. I'm going to teach you how to have healthy boundaries. There's a link below, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. When people would come to me for therapy back when I had my counseling practice, of course I would hear all sorts of emotions that they would experience when they were trying to come to terms with that strongly narcissistic person. People would talk to me about their feelings of disillusionment that they had because of the relationship gone bad, or maybe they had lots of anger that they didn't know what to do with, or perhaps they felt crushed, or maybe they would talk with me about having felt duped by that individual and they feel terribly embarrassed because of whatever's gone on. Sometimes they would talk to me about the fullness of the rejection that they felt. And one of the summarizing kinds of statements that they might make as they were trying to explain why they felt as they did is they might say something like, "I thought we had a connection. At one point, I trusted this individual, or I assumed that we were going to be able to build a trust, but none of that has happened." In other words, what they had was trauma, and I'm going to get to that in just a few moments. See, let's understand that humans are naturally hardwired for connection. We want to have bonds with one another. We want people in our world to say something to the effect of, "You matter," or "I see you as being significant," or "I'm here with you, I'm here for you. Why don't we apply our efforts together as we engage with the rest of the world?" We want to know that there are people out there that have our back. In other words, that we have that bond with. Now, narcissists also want to have bonds, but their beginning point when they come toward you with that desire to bond is so damaged that it disrupts whatever possibilities might be there. And their beginning point, obviously, is given to them by some of their deeper history. By the way, that a lot of it has nothing to do with you. They want to make you think that you're the problem with their bonding issues, but you're not. You're a player on the stage. But their beginning point is they have a lot of questions about the nature of trust. Or they've had a lot of questions about who's to be judged and ashamed because they've been on the receiving end of that. And of course, they just kind of pass along what they couldn't come to terms with. Narcissists have a history of having felt unheard or unseen by other individuals. They've learned that social structures are yet another place to play competitive games. That's how they've learned to engage with people. They've had much exposure to anger or abuse or destructive patterns from other individuals. And so when they say they want to bond with you, or they implied, that's all well and good, but because of their deep history of dysfunction and neurotic kinds of patterns, what they do is they bring an attitude of control. It's like, well, I've got to stay in control because you know how this world is. They bring with them a mindset that says there's an idealized way that people are supposed to connect with me, and I've got to make sure that I receive the ideal from other individuals, and that's their neediness that they have. And then they also bring, even as they attempt to bond, they bring an unwillingness to be open and vulnerable, which kind of goes completely contrary to the whole concept of bonding. But keep in mind, they don't have good capacities for trust. And so the net result, when narcissists wish to bond with you, they hold on to so many improper presumptions about what it's supposed to look like. In the narcissist way of looking at bonding, they don't have a sense of mutuality, which is part of what bonding requires. Instead, narcissists say, "I want preferential treatment from you. Make me look good, make me feel good, and then we're bonded." Or they may bring a notion that says, I need you to agree with me and my opinions and my preferences, and that way I know we're bonded there. Or part of their notion of what bonding is, it means that you're supposed to overlook their improprieties or inappropriate behaviors as they presume that you are bonding with them. You're not allowed to challenge them, and you can't confront because that doesn't suit their narrative. One of their ideas when they want to bond with you is they say, now, what I want you to do is I want you to park your independent mind at the back door and let me do all the thinking for you. They want you to align with them about the people they don't particularly like, and they want you to feel the same kind of feelings toward others as they feel. And so in their mind, that's bonding. But you'll notice that as they attempt to bond with you, it's laid on an entire foundation of dishonesty and impropriety. And as a result, the bonding is not that at all. It's just simply a neurotic way of engaging, and it's not gratifying for either party, frankly. And once you see through this, and you realize that their notion of bonding isn't anywhere close to what you believe to be healthy, and so you try to talk with them about the better alternative, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be on the receiving end of lots of accusations. Well, I'm the one that wants to make things work, but obviously you don't. You're going to be on the receiving end of their retribution efforts. In other words, you're going to pay if this doesn't work out very well. They can become mean. They can be absurdly entitled in the way that they think about you and your requirements toward them. They do a lot of blame shifting. If there's something that went wrong, well, it can't be them, so it has to be you. They want you, they remind you that you're responsible for making them feel good because that's their neurotic notion of bonding. They'll hold you in contempt when you fail to satisfy them. They'll continue on with more demands and more threats, and then ultimately you're going to be discarded. And so in the end of all of that, what are you left with? And there's where we go back to our original word. You're left with trauma. When we talk about trauma and the bonding that narcissists wish to have with you, it turns into what we call trauma bonding. It means that you have so been on a persistent pattern of abuse. You've received abuse. You've been on the receiving end of exploitations and harsh treatment that you wind up having such an exasperated feeling of dejection and sorrow and grief that you finally think to yourself, I've lost myself because I'm so busy trying to satisfy that person's requirements. And so when narcissists come toward you with the notion that implies, let's connect, let's bond, it's so necessary for you to recognize, but what they bring from their interior is so damaged that they're not able to do that. You see, when you attempt to bond properly with other individuals, hopefully you're going to be drawing from a foundation of your own personal integrity. Hopefully you have a certain amount of peace, or at least some sense of well-being that says, I know who I am and where I'm going, and it's going to bode well for everyone. Hopefully, as you bond, there's an element of love or goodness or decency that is driving the goals that they would have. When you attempt to bond with other individuals, you want there to be a certain amount of insight, psychological insight toward who you are, toward who they are. They don't have good insight or self-awareness regarding themselves, and they sure don't have any particular awareness of who you are. And so in the end, you can finally conclude, well, they want your bonding, they want your attachments, but there's no sense of reciprocation. Like I say, there's no particular mutuality there. And ultimately, you begin realizing their idea of bonding looks a whole lot like just transactions to me. And you're just simply a means to an end. And in fact, they almost might even consider you as just being kind of a property or someone to just manipulate or exploit. And then once they're done with you, then you can be on your merry way then. And then their esteem is inevitably going to be managed at your expense. So narcissists, like everyone else, want to engage. I thought we had a connection. Well, they want to have connections. But like I say, they bring so much damage that inevitably it's going to end with some form of trauma, and which is why we call it a trauma bond. You wind up so filtering your thoughts and feelings and your decisions through that person, thinking, I don't want to cause any more problems than I already have, that it's simply not going to be sustainable. Narcissists cannot bond with you because they're too neurotic. They're too anxiety driven. They're too fear driven. They're too broken. Okay. That being the case, I'm hoping you can also decide that you can't afford to continue to put yourself back in there trying to force something to happen that simply is not going to happen. You can't afford to be their hero and try to think, well, I'll be the one that makes the breakthrough, because it takes two, and they have to do their work their side of the equation, and that's where the breakdown is going to come. And you certainly can't afford then to eventually become little more than their scapegoat that they put all of their emotional ills onto. It just simply doesn't work. So I hope that as you want to connect and you want to have trust, you're going to be able to do so because you have the skills that are part of the necessity for making that happen. But I'm hoping you can also realize, but this is a two-way street, and that other individual has way too much damage to have a sincere and a meaningful bond. I get it, but I need to move on towards some individuals who know how to manage it in such a way where it's win-win, not just me losing all the time. I hope that videos such as this can give you a good idea of what you're dealing with. It's so essential for you to have a knowledge and an awareness and an insight into this pattern so that you don't get thrown off your good intentions and efforts. If you've not already hit the subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. I consider it a privilege that you allow me to be a part of your growth journey, so we'll keep more videos coming in your direction. Hit the like button too, by the way. Also, if you have a need for therapy, I'm so pleased that we're sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com. There's a link below that will take you to their website. Sometimes when you've been through things that I've been describing, it's good to have someone who can help you sift it out. And there's a whole team of licensed professional therapists. And so if that's a need that you would have, I would strongly encourage you to go in that direction. Speaking of which, I also have my therapeutic courses. It's like signing up for an online class. And each course has multiple videos, written documents, guided questions. We have Ready, Set, Connect about how to make good connections. This is me about establishing your boundaries, free to be finding yourself despite the controllers. I have webinars that you can purchase. We also have our Surviving Narcissism podcast. We have my website with many articles on there, and my books, lots of resources for you to avail yourself to. I know you want to bond, and I know it's very disillusioning when that not only does not happen, but you wind up walking away with feelings of trauma. But at least if you can understand what you're dealing with, it allows you to make the cut that's necessary so that you can move on to people that know what to do with the best that you have to offer. Because I'm hoping that in the end, you're going to be committed to your own personal growth and stability so that you can be an ongoing person of peace.